Hello everybody and welcome. This is a not very exciting video and it's not very visually engaging, but this is how stats on specifically the DPS works in Neverwinter. So that's just a nice quick video. As you see here, you can probably find this online as well. I'll try and put a link down in the description, but this is a stat calculator for Neverwinter and it helps people really understand exactly how damage works. So we'll have a little look at it. First things first, item level. We'll put you at 100,000, and for every 10,000 I go over 100,000, I gain 1%. So 1,000 item level is worth 1% damage gain. Now, this is really good in non-skill content. However, if you go into a dungeon that scales you down, obviously you're reducing the amount of damage you have, as long as you're attaining the level of which you're skilled to. The scale down gloves that you can buy do help with that. However, that's not as much damage as you're going to lose. So if you scale down from 110k item level, you're losing hundreds of percent of like you're losing tons and tons of damage, and the 20% you make back is nice, but it's not as much as what you're normally losing. Now we'll go on to power. Power, for every 10% of power gained from 50% onwards, which is kind of the starting stat, is 6.67. The same thing goes, obviously, here for your combat advantage. And down here, I will pop this in here. I'll put this up to 50. There you go. And your flat damage bonus is equal to that. So power is the most important, as power is your main stat, and flat damage gain is also very, very, very important. However, the more you get, so if I put this up to, let's say, 80, and I'll be going up to 90% with that, as you see, it's now worth 5.556. The same thing goes for the combat advantage, and the same things would go for, obviously, your flat damage bonus. So the higher you get, the more stats scale down in value, as you see here, 4.762 for the addition. Put 5, you'll see it's obviously that percentage there. Excellent. So that's power and combat advantage. Obviously, combat advantage is very, very important. However, if you're campaigning, combat advantage is a lot less necessary. It's very useful, but it's a lot less necessary because you're not always going to be gaining combat advantage like you would in a dungeon where you've got a tank. Down here, we've got critical strike. If I put this to 10 and I put the crit severity to 10, you'll see you gain about 4% for each of those. If I put this up to 80, as it only goes up to 90, 3.571. And I put this up to 80, even though it goes up to 120 now, it's exactly the same amount of stats. And accuracy is the only one that changes. 80 to 10, 4.762. So it's a little bit less important than obviously crit strike and crit severity. But if I put this down to 50, 3.205. So you actually gain more damage per 10% the higher it goes, which is the only stat in the game that does this. So it's interesting. It's definitely worth stacking if you can get it. At a certain point, like my character, for example, has tons of flat damage gain. So I mainly play the ranger, and we get a lot of flat damage gain. So let's say it's like 75%. And let's say I can add Rage of Flames for 5%. That's 2.857. Or, for example, let's say I'm sitting currently at 85. And I could gain 5 in crit strike. And I could gain 5 for Devil's Precision. Instead of Rage of Flames, I could gain 2.439 plus 2.439. That's right. I don't know why my screen's done this. There we go. Plus, there we go. 2.381, giving me obviously a total of just shy of 5%. As opposed to the 2.857. So if I'm not capping my stats, and the Devil's Precision will allow me to cap my stats, then obviously the Devil's Precision will be more beneficial than the Rage of Flames. And as you can see here, that will show you right down the bottom here, your average damage. So if let's say I put it up to my item level for my ranger, in 5-man content, which is 118, and then let's say I was to put on the new weapons rather than the perfect weapons that I'm currently running, they would give me about 4k item level. So we'll just go for plus 4,000. I'll gain a damage gain of 3.39. So as you see, that's just a quick overview of how stats work in Neverwinter. And the only thing I'll say is obviously crit strike needs to be capped. Always capped. As that is the chance that you will gain your crit severity. If you have a low crit strike, you're not going to be gaining much from the crit severity, and the crit severity is useless. So if your crit severity is super high but your crit strike super low, try to switch that around. It's going to help your damage a lot. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful. It's not a very exciting video, but I hope this somewhat helps. I'll try put a link in the description for this actual stat calculator. This doesn't help for healers because it doesn't accurately represent any of the other stats, and especially not tanks because it only shows offensive. It doesn't give you anything at all. It literally only changes your calculated damage because obviously DPS get a bonus to their damage, healers get half of that, and tanks obviously get no bonus to their damage. Anyway, thank you for watching, and hopefully this was helpful, and I hope you guys have fun with your DPSing and figuring out your stats.